Hey folks, now that my full 100% review of Time Stranger is out, it's time to start talking about the DLC that came out recently. I started by getting all the new Digimon. There were 6 Digimon in total added with this DLC, which included Crest-Garurumon and Blitzgreymon, who digivolve together to become Omnimon Alter S. There was another 2 Omnimon added as well, which are Omnimon Zwart Defeat, Omnimon Alter B, and finally Parallelmon, who acts as the main villain of this DLC and seemingly the DLC going forward. I like all the new Digimon added, but in particular it's great to see Parallelmon in more mainstream Digimon media, since he was previously only a part of the original Digimon manga V-Tamer. He has a lot of potential as a Digimon villain, but I think perhaps now wasn't the best time to utilize him, as there's a lot of fatigue going on around the whole multiverse thing due to Marvel movies and shows. But we've seen multiversal events before in Digimon, like for example the ending of Digimon Hunters, which gathered many Digimon protagonists together to fight Quartzmon. The other Digimon were mostly less interesting, don't get me wrong. I'm glad they're in the game now, but it's hard for me to be excited about them, as for the most part they didn't really change anything. And what I mean by that is that, looking at Persona 5 as an example, the DLC personas that we get usually had very unique skills that you wouldn't otherwise get access to, and I was hoping to see more of that here. It would have added some interesting use cases for the newer Digimon and potentially added some strategies for future playthroughs. The only Digimon they added that comes close to this for me is Blitzgreymon, who has a similar effect to Tyrant Kabuterimon, where he can add damage reduction to your party. It's difficult to make unique skills for most Digimon, as most Digimon attacks are just that, just simple attacks, but there's room to use the lore of the Digimon to make more interesting skills to flesh out the gameplay a bit, which I would have liked this DLC to take a chance on. Onto the story of the DLC now, and I liked how it told you about the general difficulty level of the DLC going in, but I chose to ignore it and instead went in with a pretty maxed out team, which I admit might have weakened my experience a little bit, as all the fights got pretty much one shot by me, so if there was any interesting boss fights then I didn't really get to experience them. So we head through the elevators into the Akashic back door, and shortly after we meet Crest-Garurumon and Blitzgreymon confronting Parallelmon. Parallelmon attacks and we are sent to another area where we meet a familiar face, Kyoko Kuremi, albeit a much younger looking Kyoko than we know from Cyberslough. She was also transported here by Parallelmon, and we find her in a room looking at a lot of bubbles full of Digimon tamers, which are apparently being digested by Parallelmon. For the majority of the DLC, the areas that you travel through will either be areas that we know from the base game, or rooms like in the Akashic back door, so there's nothing particularly interesting there, but for a short DLC like this, I guess it serves its purpose and it's fine. We move on after a quick fight and meet Inori and Agumon, who are also joining us for the DLC. I don't think they're the exact same Inori and Agumon that we know, but instead one's from a different timeline. A couple doors later we rejoin Crest-Garurumon and Blitzgreymon, who think we are aiding Parallelmon for some reason, but after we clear things up we decide to help each other save the tamers trapped in the bubbles. We see Inori and Kyoko's fathers speaking, and we learn that Kyoko isn't very happy with her father for some reason. We then see a different scene at the Misono private detective office. It's pretty cool seeing these extra scenes between these characters, as it shows a deeper friendship than was shown in the main game. Following this we get to see Ranamon's big betrayal, which just turned out to be a pretty simple "oh no, please don't hurt me," and then she hits them. Wow, Ranamon, really incredible play by you. They never saw that coming. You really showed those humans. Given the short runtime of the DLC, I guess we can't have expected more than this, but I fully thought Ranamon would at least work with public safety for a little bit before betraying them, instead of the immediate betrayal. It does do a nice job of setting up the fact that Kodai is empathetic to Digimon. Speaking of empathy, I did like the scene between Blitz and Kyoko, as the voice line by Blitz's actor was well delivered, and he had a lot of sympathy in its tone. Kyoko's VA also does a good job of helping us understand the effects of the betrayal on our family. Another good scene follows as we see further evidence that Kodai and Kosuke were good friends, and not just former colleagues. Kosuke talking about dealing with the source of his loss and misery helped me understand how he ended up becoming a part of public safety again near the end of the game. I do wish that this scene or something like it would have been a part of the base game, as overall I think Kosuke's character was underdeveloped there, despite his potential as a human antagonist. So it turns out that even after being injured, Kodai still decides that he can't ignore the Digimon threat and heads into the Akashic back door, despite Kyoko's protests, and that's why she hates him. It's understandable that she would hate him for this, but also, like, the world's ending, and it's kind of selfish that she doesn't want her father, who has the potential to do something about it, not do something about it. Through the next door we actually run into Kodai, and he's fighting Omnimon Zwart Defeat, who is apparently a friend of Crest and Blitz, which is quite interesting because normally a Digimon like Zwart Defeat would be a villain like he was in Next Order. Kodai gets a great showing here though, with a very cool action scene as we kind of just stand there watching him awkwardly, which was a bit weird. It was awesome to see someone else use the Digigun that the protagonist uses, which was copied by Dr. Simmons. The scene we see shortly after between Kodai and Dr. Simmons is great, as they're two of the biggest empathizers when it comes to Digimon. The trank bullets that Kodai uses are a neat idea, and it would have made for an interesting addition to the cross arts for the DLC, but unfortunately that's not the case. A big scene next is we finally join Kodai's fight, and after defeating Omnimon's Zwart Defeat, he evolves into Omnimon Alter B and attacks Kyoko. Kodai rushes to defend her with the shield, like the one that we saw in the base game that we used Digimon to attack. Cress and Blitz realize that Kodai is an ally of Digimon and evolve into Omnimon Alter S, with another DNA cutscene like we got with Apollomon and Dianamon. I do miss the DNA Digivolve 2 from the anime, but it looks pretty awesome anyway. We defeat Alter B and he joins us after Kuremi blasts him with a Digigum, bringing him back to his senses. Kyoko seems to have had a change of heart and now believes that human and Digimon working together is possible, and she also seems to have forgiven her dad. It was a quick change that I didn't really feel was altogether that earned, but again, short runtime and all that. Considering they only had a few scenes to convey this, I think they did a pretty good job. The final fight begins with a brief talk with Parallelmon. Agumon points out that Parallelmon's ability to see the future means that he already knows the outcome of the fight, which makes him feel like a significant threat. Parallelmon summons Galmon and Kazuhamon, which is a nice reference to Next Order, where they were the partners of Shoma Tezuki. If this fight has anything interesting about it, then I'm afraid I can't tell you, because I completely one-shot everyone with Chronomon. Afterwards, we save the Tamers in the bubbles and part ways with everyone, having dealt with the threat for now. And that was the first DLC. I think overall I enjoyed it, but the short runtime of it, paired with the lack of interesting new skills to use, made it for a pretty meh experience. The story might end up paying off, as it was set up decently well here with Parallelmon, but we're gonna have to see how it plays out with the rest of the DLC. The second DLC is probably out by the time this video goes live, so look out for my video on that. But until then, thanks for watching.